Dear friends, thank you everyone for joining us this week. Our session today is the 7 types of men. And we would like to make a clarification as we start. Throughout the session, we will consistently use the word man, but we want you to remember man is an epicene noun, and as such, we are making a reference to the human genre. We're speaking about both men and women. So dear ladies, as you listen to this applies to you as much as it applies to all of our male friends that are listening. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Becoming aware of our mechanical nature lets us know what kind of man we are. The purpose of this conversation today is we need to invite reflection, because we must step out of the current state that we find ourselves today and move into a state of transition that allows us to walk into the kingdom. In the state that we are today, there is no room for us, and the door to Eden remains locked. Let's say guarded with the sword of the cherubim. So we must become aware of our mechanical nature, because that is what lets us know what kind of man we truly are. We have to become aware of the mechanical nature of our instincts. What does that mean? The mechanical nature of our instincts is easily perceived when we are faced with a threat or danger. Suddenly, there is a threat that you perceive, and you immediately start feeling within your own body and your psyche the flow of all of those chemicals that are making you ready to either run away or stand up and fight. That's an instinctive reaction. Whenever you are surprised by an unexpected impression, you walk into the kitchen, there's somebody there, or somebody deliberately, there's so many videos on TikTok, on Twitch, about people walking in there and somebody going, blah, 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 blah. It's so funny. But hey, whenever we're surprised with an unexpected impression, that reaction is entirely instinctive. It caught us by surprise because we were just not there. Something as simple as the reaction to being at heights. The vertigo some people feel, the butterflies in the stomach. For some people, this is so debilitating that they fall on their knees. And that is all mechanical instinct. Beyond those that could be perhaps so evident, there is something called the need for social bonding. There is an instinctive nature of man to be social, to gather around in groups. That's perfect. But when that is not satisfied, that starts triggering other reactions that go into the psyche and the emotion. Am I not good enough? Why am I not connecting? I feel rejected, etc., etc. And of course, the impulse to protect others. This one, perhaps worth mentioning, this has nothing to do with you being courageous and just putting yourself between the source of danger and somebody else. That is honorable. But this impulse to protect others, it sometimes invites us to start meddling in things that are none of our business. To start giving people advice that is not requested. To get involved in circumstances that we should really be not involved in, because there are some karmas that must be paid. That impulse to protect others, that comes from deep within our instinctive center. And what is dominating here are both the motor and the instinctive centers of the human machine. If you see any of these in you, be watchful and take note. Then there is the mechanical nature of our emotions. This mechanical nature of our emotions is related to, for example, sexually induced excitement that impairs reason. That sexually induced excitement could be as simple as watching a movie. You're simply resting comfortably in your sofa in your living room, and a lewd image shows up, and suddenly everything else is tuned out. And you are deep into that. Impairing reason, and it doesn't matter if there are children close by, or if there is somebody else who could be offended by the images. I mean, this is so intense that this sexual induced excitement that impairs reason manifests today, even in public transit, when people are using their phones to look at things that perhaps they shouldn't be.
I had that happen. I was on a flight and a woman was looking at porn on a flight.
No way.
It was so weird. It was a woman, it was an airplane, and it was public. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, I think that we all have, we are inferior as men. I think that we all have higher expectations of women, but we're all in the same boat of degeneration. But
I realized that day.
Interesting. Okay. There's also, in terms of the mechanical nature of our emotion, we can perceive this in the psychological blindness that is caused by ambitions. We focus ourselves into getting to some goal line. And sometimes we get there, but we leave behind a path of bruises. Bruised children, bruised spouses, bruised friends, affected family relationships, just because we just wanted that. Overindulgence in food or drink, expressions of anger and rage, any reaction to a sense of unfairness, that is just the mechanical nature of our emotions. You perceive that something against you is unfair, and now you start immediately building resentments. And many bits of resentment lead to many overt actions. And before you realize, you are not comfortable even saying certain things in front of someone that you perhaps have trusted forever. Lassitude, inertia within ourselves that result in not caring, in unwillingness to exert effort. If you see any of these in your own experience, that is an indication that the emotional center right then and there has been dominating the machine. And then we have the mechanical nature of our intellect. And perhaps there would be many listening to this that would identify with this one tremendously. When, for example, you find yourself ruminating about past conversations, or trying to find hidden meanings behind what somebody said, or hidden meanings behind something that happened. That is just mechanical intellection. If you find yourself at any moment worrying excessively about the future, that is just the intellect mechanically going through thesis and antithesis, going through the battle of opposites, bouncing left and right nonstop. Something as simple as spending hours to craft the quote-unquote perfect social media post, that is just mechanical intellect. It is completely useless. The quest for likes and creating mental artifices to get them, I mean, that is useless and irrelevant. If you find yourself overanalyzing simple decisions like what to eat, simple decisions like what to wear. Should I go here? Should I wear these shoes or those shoes? I mean, what? This is just the mechanical nature of the intellect. If you see yourself making up mental scenarios, like for example, when you're in the shower, revisiting arguments and what is it that you would have said or that you will say when the situation shows up, if you find yourself dwelling on past mistakes, in many cases, questioning your own ability or your own worthiness, dear friends, that is just the intellectual center that is dominating the human machine. And I want you to know this. All of this mechanicity is driven into us by the moon. The moon, as a mechanical counterweight, is what moves all of the mechanics of nature. And we see this everywhere. We cannot consider ourselves immune to these influences, more so when we as human beings are part of this delicate organic layer that exists in the outermost crust of the planet. For the planet itself, the moon has influence over the bodies of water and over organisms. We know very well that the ocean tides are regulated by the moon. We have known this for centuries. We know very well that the moon itself affects the timing and the intensity of river flows. It does. It affects the salinity in the freshwater rivers. It even affects the trees, because whenever we are in the crescent moon, the sap of the tree rises all the way to the top. And in the waning moon, that sap returns to the roots. Okay? It does not mean that the tree is void of sap, but in terms of where that proportion lies, this is what happens with that gravitational pull of the moon. And if this happens with those bodies of water, we must not forget that as an organism, we are 60% water. Beyond the bodies of water and the organism, the moon has influence over the animal kingdom. Marine creatures, they time their reproductive cycles with the lunar cycle. Marine creatures and birds, they use the moon as a navigational aid. And even wolves, coyotes, well, they exhibit increased activity during periods of the full moon. I mean, there's so many great stories, like the werewolf. That dark creature comes out only with a manifestation of the moon. And even though that is a good story to share as a haunting mystery type of story, we cannot discard the influence then that the moon has within the human psyche, because there is influence in all types of transactions that involve liquids. Our blood, our hormones are part of that. And so the moon will influence the hormonal production in some animals. People may sleep less during a full moon, experiencing shorter sleep, lesser periods of deep sleep. And anecdotal data suggests that the moon influences human behavior. If you have friends who are nurses in the ER, whenever there's a full moon, they anticipate that the ER is going to be full. Mental hospitals, people who work in mental hospitals, they know that when there's full moon, the patients are behaving a little bit differently. Some of them even more aggressive. All of this mechanicity is taking place whether we realize it or not, whether we like it or not, and as a consequence, that very same mechanicity exists within the internals of the microcosmic man. Because this that exists outside also exists within us. Immanuel Kant, in the third canon of thought, he states, the exterior is a reflection of the interior. If there is this mechanical counterweight in nature, psychologically, there is also a mechanical counterweight that is leading us into all of these mechanical reactions. So Samael says, we carry that moon within ourselves, that psychological mechanical moon, and obviously it has a decisive influence in our psyche. He says, there is a need to create a conscious psychological moon, and by this he means that we must create a conscious center of gravity instead of a mechanical center of gravity. We are going to refer to that as the permanent center of consciousness. So if at any moment you hear in any other lecture, somebody speaks about the permanent center, the PCC, or they explicitly state the permanent center of consciousness, what they're speaking is about this teaching of Samael in which we're looking at creating a conscious center of gravity. We're sharing this with you this week because last week when we spoke of the tree of life, we indicated that the realm of Asilut, of the gods, the realm of formation of the innermost, and the realm of magic, where we find Netzah, the mind, Chod, the realm of the emotion, and Yesod, the sexuality. Each one of them has a center of gravity. Keter, in the logos, Tiferet, for the innermost, and Yesod, for the human being. We must then develop a psychological center of gravity. And for us to develop that permanent center of consciousness, Samael says we need a third force. Okay, so what is that? That is the Gnostic, esoteric, Christic work. This is new. Esoteric, Christic. What is that? Let's remember that when we spoke of Christ last week, we said that the Christ is not a man, but a crown. And we must seek to work in secret, individually, and particularly with this work of wisdom so that we can wear that crown. The foundation has been discussed already in many lectures thus far. And I'm hoping that by now, when you see this, you can roll your eyes and say, you're going to keep saying it. But we have to continue emphasizing that the foundation of this work is to develop a rich interior life. Because there are many students that come through this, and after 15 years, they're saying, I'm stuck. I don't feel I'm making progress. That is not a good indication that you have been developing a rich interior life. For us to do that, we have to actively, day after day, negate the opportunity for negative thoughts or sentiments. If we keep doing, like some people do, that they're watching freaking politics on their phone every day, and they're getting angry at the situation in the world, well, that's not a good job at negating the opportunity for negative thoughts and sentiments. If people are going into the supermarket and in the parking lot there is an altercation because of a parking spot, because somebody was not willing to walk 10 additional feet, that is not an indication of negating the opportunity to negative sentiments. So we have to do that. We have to learn to embrace with kindness, with good heart, the negative actions of others. Because those negative actions of others are nothing more than the crystallization of the mystery of the Nahuatl Lucifer. Lucifer is not the devil. Lucifer is the bearer of light. And our psychological trainer needs to assume different forms, different shapes to bring us the test. Depending on the circumstances, the causes, the conditions are present, it will manifest. And we need to demonstrate that mastery. For us to develop that foundation, we have to be venerating all things that are sacred. And yes, we can say, oh yes, when I see a temple, I feel that veneration in my heart. But we cannot do that when we are facing the physical structure of the temple. And then when something goes wrong, we can say, God damn it. We have to align ourselves with what is right and what is true. We have to live life with serenity. We have to live a life of service. And of course, we have to develop the memory of the esoteric work. If any of you listening does not remember what is the memory of the esoteric work, that means we have to make things that are subconscious, conscious. And that is why at the end of the day, when we meditate, we have to do an exercise of retrospection so that we can revisit those events that happen in the day. The innermost will help us, by the principle of spontaneity, show you some images of things that are important immediately. And we must take that and bring those subconscious reactions into the conscious space. We need to bring light into the psyche. Because when that happens, well, now we have a foundation. Now we have an opportunity to make progress. So please, all of you listening, don't complain that you're not making progress if you're not doing these things. Because we have to, we must do this. Now, to develop a permanent center of consciousness, we have to develop that rich interior life, but we also must integrate something that is called the spark plug duty of the being. This may be new to many of you. What is this thing? Spark plug duty. Well, the spark plug duty of the being is many things. But the one thing that it is seeking to do is for us to become aware of a genuine reality. I mean, that is beautiful, but it is also very abstract. What does that mean? That means that we must awaken enough so that there are no intellectual concepts flowing mechanically through the intellect. That is a big deal. Because if it's flowing through the intellect, we have to be able to find from where is that coming from. What is the source of that thought? That is what in a previous lecture we referred to as a balanced psyche. That Samael says, you guys, you still don't have balanced psyche. This is how we make it. We have to be able to become cognizant of the activities in the emotional center. Suddenly you feel like, blah. Somebody says, what's wrong? And people say, well, first of all, many of them will lie blatantly. They will say, I'm fine. I mean, that is the biggest lie in the history of mankind. Not fine. What is going through that emotional center? Many people are honest and they say, I don't know. I feel like I don't even know why I feel like this. I mean, what could be happening is that you could be experiencing an emotion of somebody else. We have a telepathic center that is active, but if we don't know what's coming in and out. I mean, if you're watchful during your day, maybe you go outside and your neighbor comes out and they say, my dog died. Or I say, now I figure out. But we have to be cognizant of what is happening in the emotional center. If you're feeling this or that way emotionally, the only way you can be feeling like that is because there has been a thought preceding that. And if you don't even know what that thought is, that means that that thought is coming from deep in the subconsciousness and that there is more to be done developing the memory of the esoteric work. We must become cognizant of all habits. We must be cognizant of the movements of the body. As part of this spark plug duty of the being, we must become lords of our instincts. And, even more important, we need to transmute the sexual energy. You know what happens when you do not transmute the sexual energy, John? I'm going to tell you. When we have that energy and that energy is not transmuted, people start suffering from something that is called the venenoscarian vibration. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Venenoscarian vibration. That veneno, that's venom. That venenoscarian vibration happens in everyone who does not transmute the sexual created energy. And the consequence of the venenoscarian vibration is that the sexual energy itself, instead of being put at the use and benefit of the work of the being, it is being put to the use and benefit of the ego. And people become more cruel. We become more sarcastic. We become more cynical. Become more aggressive. Aggressive psychologically, physically, sexually. Against us, against others. And it turns us into horrendous creatures. Doesn't take that much. What we have to do is look around and we will see it. That's us. So we must transmute the sexual energy, because if we don't, that energy becomes wasted. It is not going to be stagnant. Nothing is stagnant. Hermetic principle says everything vibrates. That vibration has to go somewhere, and it goes to the ego. This is how we integrate the spark plug duty of the being. So let me go back into these three types of men. What is it that means? Type of man number 1. And let me tell you, Samael refers to these types of men from 1 to 7. There are no specific names, they're just numbers. Type of man number 1. This is the instinctive man, okay? He is dominated by the instinctive and the motor centers of the body. We already shared some examples of what that looks like. And by now, you have already heard some pointers that tells you, am I an instinctive man, yes or no? Most likely your answer has been sometimes. There is type of man number 2. Type of man is the emotional man. This is the one that lives and thrives in inferior emotions and passions and in desires. Any emotion that has to do with violence, any emotion that has to do with cheering, any emotion that has to do with satisfying the desires of the palate, of the stomach, of the mind, all of that, that is right there. And the type of man number 3 is the intellectual man. This is the one that is constantly reasoning, where all of his activities are based on the intellect. And some of you who may have already done some esoteric work, those of you who are on the advanced list of students, you know very well that there is a selfishness that is of an intellectual nature. Where that selfishness, we just want to be right all the time. We want people to recognize our righteousness. How much is it that we know what we do, etc., etc. So these are these 3 types of men. Evidently, we will find some cases in which some human creature is stuck as a type 1 man. Instinctive and motor centers, that is what dominates. That is the way that they operate. We will find some cases where there's the emotional man. They just thrive on the emotions. They're just constantly craving emotions, just constantly craving affections. And then there is some others who will be stuck in the type 3, completely disconnected from everything except if there is an intellectual linkage into them. But for the most part, people in general are bouncing between type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 3 requires concept. So of these 3 types of men, that is the higher type. The emotional type, that is middle of the road, yeah. Dogs, cats, horses, elephants, they all express emotion. That is a trait from the animal kingdom. The motor instinctive man, that is a very primitive type of man. Samael doesn't say that. This instructor is saying that. And we find ourselves bouncing. Sometimes we're 3, sometimes we're 1, sometimes we're 2. Sure. That's what we're constantly doing. So what? Samael says about these 3 types of men. Men number 1, 2, and 3 form the circle of the confusion of tongues. Man 1, 2, and 3 are the tower of Babel, because there is confusion of tongues within that tower. You know what that means? That means that when we have a type 1 man that is instinctive and motor, and he is trying to have a conversation with somebody who is a type 3 man, intellectual. The type 3 man will listen to what the type 1 is saying and translate it according to his own degree of understanding. So in terms of communication, if they were just playing catch, that would be the equivalent of throwing the ball, but somewhere else. There's no catching. If the type 3 man is in a conversation with a type 2 man, the type 2 man is not going to understand the type 3. Because one is speaking from the intellect and the other one is trying to figure what that means from the emotion. And when the emotional man is speaking and the type 1 man is listening, the type 1 cannot understand. Because one is rooted in deep emotions, whether they are positive or negative is irrelevant. They're rooted from emotions, and type 1 man is just completely instinctive. I don't get what you're saying. This type of inability to communicate, it is a big deal. Because if there is no understanding, can be no harmony. I mean, if I am a type 2 man and I'm expressing to you this grief that I have because of this thing that happened, and you're a type 3, you're going to think that I am just so stupid. Why are you even calling that? That is so irrelevant. If we see a type 1 man reacting instinctively and we are a type 2 man, we'll say, oh, that is so cruel. That is so bad. That's what happens. This is the Tower of Babel. Actually, Samael says, the reason why we have these conflicts in the world is because of these 3 types of men. We are seeking to get into a state where we can transition into a higher realm of creation. That higher realm of creation is known as the kingdom. That image of the kingdom that you see here, what you see here are the 7 spheres of the planets. Septem planetarum orbes. And you see here that there are 7 orbits, and these orbits correspond to the 7 planets of alchemy. They are right here. The moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. You see them? Mm-hmm. Each one of those planets, fine. We're not speaking about the big sphere of rock or gas. We're speaking about the archetype behind it. Those are 7 archangels. Gabriel in the moon, Raphael in Mercury, Uriel in Venus, Michael or Michael in the sun, Samael in Mars, Zachariel in Jupiter, Orifiel in Saturn. From Saturn to the moon, the angel of death, the giver of rewards to man in his work in life, the warrior, the god of war, the one who facilitates the karma, leadership, affinity and magnetism, wisdom, nurturing. That is what those 7 archangels do. And we are seeking to penetrate the kingdom. This that you see here, this thing that says Coelum Imperium Habitaculo Dei, it says the empire of heaven, or the Imperium realms, which are the electronic realms, we'll cover that at a later lecture, are the abode of God. And we need to put ourselves in a situation where we can walk into that space, that kingdom. But the thing is that the kingdom is constituted by beings of types 5, 6, and 7. We are 1, 2, 3. That right there, 5, 6, and 7. In this kingdom, everyone understands everyone. There is one language. There is the word of gold. Some of our mantras come from that language. Some words like lumiso, lumiscale, which is the temple in which the great masters come together to celebrate those rituals of higher degrees. Those are words that come from that language of gold. In the Book of Solomon, that is referred to as the alphabet of the flow of the river of life. And because it's made of men of type 5, 6, and 7, there is no confusion. There is no confusion. All of these men are operating from a space in which the one that is leading is the innermost. There's harmony. There's no sickness. There's no illness. There's no conflict, because these are superior types of men. So we already covered 6. 1, 2, 3. We have an idea about 5, 6, and 7. Let me give you a little bit more about these men of the kingdom. Samael says, the problem of humanity is with men 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, a great catastrophe will take care of surgically removing these from humanity. I don't like it when Samael calls it like that, but the Bodhisattva of the Archangel of Mars has to speak in Martian terms. And he is just to the point. We know that we have been living the end of times. It is what it is. We have to do the very best with what we got. And this great catastrophe that we already saw it at the times of Atlantis with the universal flood is going to happen. And that catastrophe is going to take care of surgically removing these from humanity. Actually, you know what Samael says? Samael says, look, it's time to remove these men 1, 2, and 3 from these 5, 6, and 7. Because these 1, 2, and 3 have been creating too much problem for many centuries. And they are interfering with the work of these other men. I mean, this is so evident. Men, type 7 men, type 6 men, who are performers of the deeds of the great law. I mean, let's think of type 7 men who are, for example, the judges of karma. They need to apply some karmas to humanity, to each and every one of us individually. Not only we have our individual karma, we have to live in a nation and experience the karma of the nation. And that nation isn't a planet that is experiencing the karma of the worlds. So this is a complicated web of karmic connections. And if somebody is going through a karma and then we, as emotional men, interfere to, actually as an instinctive man, we want to protect them from whatever, and we start giving them advice. We're already interfering with the decrees of the great law, trying to do good, clueless about what is the right thing to do. We just complicate things. This is a problem. So Samael says it's time that something is done to get this removed.
What I like about it is that he says surgically removing. I feel like Atlantis might not have been so surgical.
It was.
Yeah.
Because those who deserted were taken away into a safe abode so that they could continue the work.
I understand that now, but when you first hear it, it's just a washing of the whole land.
True. Certainly. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about type man 5. This 5th type of man is a man who has fabricated a solar astral body. What many people would not know is that when you have fabricated a solar astral body, you have become immortal in the astral plane. And you have become immortal because the astral plane and the realm of the mind, Hod and Netzach, they are within the realm of the eternity. So you become immortal. Not only they have fabricated the solar astral body, they know that they have it and they can use it the same way that you use your hands. So if you're here thinking, I think I have an astral body that I created in some other life, are you sure? Can you use it? Maybe you do. Maybe you have it. Better to keep that quiet. Esoteric. That's your own business. These men of type 5, not only they can use it at will, but they can roam throughout space. They can visit the heart temples of these 7 planets of alchemy. They can present themselves at the foot of those great beings, those choirs of angels that are responsible for all of this. And they can be in contact with the circle of the conscious solar humanity. So they can be in communication with these other great masters. This is a type 5 man. The type 6 man goes beyond that. He has fabricated a solar mental body. This is a man that the divine mother Kundalini, that particular and individual divine mother, has crowned as a Buddha. It's an illuminated one. Not only he has fabricated that mental body, he can use that mental body at will. And with it, he can capture all of this wisdom of nature. I mean, that degree of illumination is remarkable. And beyond that, there is a type 7 man. That is the man that has fabricated a solar causal body. And not only he has fabricated that body, but he can use it at will. And that man has the opportunity of receiving what is called the Venustic initiation. That Venustic initiation is just the birth of the Christ within his heart. That Venustic initiation is equivalent to Jesus receiving that Holy Spirit when he was baptized in the Jordan by the hands of John the Baptist, who, by the way, was also Christified. So this is a title. This type 7 man, when he receives those anemic and spiritual principles of the being, that guy right there becomes what is known as a title, the Son of Man. And we know, the great master Jesus, he's known as the Son of Man. That's a type 7 man. That is a huge deal. So these are the men 5, 6, and 7.
Why is it called the Son of Man?
Because it is the product of the work of the practitioner. That consciousness received that human form, worked intensely to eliminate any misconstrued creations, the ego, was able to use the solar germs that exist within our creative waters, a gift of the sun, of Michael, and taken all of those and fabricated the superior existential bodies that, just like these realms, they exist concentrically, one within the other, without creating any interference. So he can move consciously in this dense realm of substance. And he can also take this body and bring it into the ethereal realm through Jin state. And he now has the ability to take all of that and penetrate within his own astral body. There's an exercise that is done for the great masters. Once you have that astral body, you can invoke that physical body. And instead of the astral body coming into the physical body comes into that fifth dimension and penetrates the astral body through the pineal gland of the astral body itself. Wow. So all of this is a product of that work and that sacrifice. The Son of Man, and that man is a true human because he has the perfect balance between whom, the spirit, and manas, the mind. Whom manas? Yes. Good question. So these are the men of the kingdom. So what is it that we need? We need to break away from bouncing between a type 1, 2, or 3. And we need to become men, type 4 men. That is what we need. The type 4 man is shown right here in this beautiful carving in marble. This right here is courtesy of the Met Museum. And what we are seeing here is the practitioner. And he is received by his Divine Mother in 2 of her aspects. That right there is Demeter. Demeter is the goddess of harvests. It's important because as the goddess of harvest and seeds, there is the seed of wheat for us here in the Western culture. The wheat as a seed is a symbol of the solar seeds that we have been given by the sun. If we were in the East, it would be rice. If we were among the Aztecs, it would be corn. But it's always a seed, you see? And not only the Divine Mother is receiving him, notice as she's holding onto the scepter of wisdom, there is the 5th aspect of the Divine Mother as well. This is Persephone, the goddess of hell. So he, similar to the image that we had shown you before from the Borgia Codex, where there is that man with no skin, flayed, with an open chest, with a blade of obsidian, spewing blood, walking towards Quetzalcoatl, and leaving behind Mictlantecutli, the god of hell. Here we see the man walking away from Persephone, the cycles of death, and entering the permanence of the Divine Mother space. This is so beautiful. This is so amazing. This is part of the mysteries of Eleusis, which are similar to the mysteries of Mithra, which is the same serpentine wisdom that we find in the Maya and the Aztec. It is the same teaching. It is just that we give it different. So what happens? This type of man, number 4, He has balanced the centers of the human machine. So there is a balance between the three brains, the emotional, the motor, sexual, instinctive, and the intellectual. This man right here, he has fabricated a conscious psychological moon, and he's ready to enter the activities of the kingdom. This guy has no more self-considerations. He has no more self-sentimentalisms. He is not seeking, how can I improve my life? He is not thinking, I need to be more positive. He's not doing any of that because that is just kindergarten stuff. This guy right here has grabbed the bull of the ego by the horns. And he has been able to work with his Divine Mother, methodically observing, comprehending, and eliminating. That is this guy. This guy is the guy that when he gets insulted, he sees himself in the shoes of the other. And he welcomes that. And he looks in his actions, and like in the esoteric work, and not in his actions, in his thoughts. Where is it that defect is? That is that man. And this man, now that he has that permanent center of consciousness, he is ready to create a psychological sun. Because those 7 planets of alchemy, they have to be integrated within the microcosmos. So he creates a psychological moon, and he must create a psychological sun and a psychological solar system. And beyond that, he has to go deep into the realms of hell to rise once again and integrate within himself even a psychological galaxy. I mean, this sounds like unbelievable, not unbelievable like this is a lie, but unbelievable like, wow, what is this? And by the time that man is able to integrate that internal galaxy, he is in the realm of the gods. He must descend into those realms of hell for multiple reasons. Going back to our transmigration of the souls, we know that what transcends is the ego. But we also know that the ego does not transcend as an integral unity. It breaks apart. There's some aspects that stay behind here, attached to things because of fears. There are other aspects of that ego that the Divine Mother could have taken, and she could have shoved them into the spheres of hell because it's too much burden for the consciousness. So he must descend and come back and retrieve all of that and reintegrate it. And of course, there is work to be done in those realms of creation because they're not there by mistake. I mean, they are part of the manifestation of God. And if it's created by, quote unquote, God, by definition, it is good. Like in Arcanum 16 of the Egyptian Tarot. Light of day, light of night. What's important is that there's light. Okay, so this is this guy. How can he create that psychological sun? Well, he creates a psychological sun when he fabricates the superior existential bodies of the being, which are the solar bodies. Solar mental, solar astral, solar causal body. And the only way to do that is through this thing called the part log duty of the being. So let me go in a little detail on what is this thing, the part log duty. I'm going to tell you this. Every week I say, I need to make these lectures these sessions like 30 minutes. Why am I still talking?
I've been wanting to ask you. I was going to let it go for a while, let it simmer, and get your thoughts on it.
Is this too much?
I think it's a lot, yeah. I liked it better when it was 2 hours.
Oh, you liked it better when it was 2 hours?
I did.
Okay.
That's my opinion. And I liked it better earlier.
Okay. We may change that. Okay, let's go back to this. What is the parlok duty of the being? The 3 factors that Samael speaks of, the 3 factors of the revolution of the consciousness, they are intimately associated with the parlok duty of the being. The first factor is death. But it is the death of anything that is undesirable that exists within. We have already spoken a little bit about this dry Mercury certainly not in detail, but we know that this is associated with the 49 levels of the mind that we spoke of last week. The second factor is birth, but it is a birth that must happen through fire and water. And in the book of John, Jesus speaks to a Pharisee. Let's all remember that we all have an internal Pharisee. That internal Pharisee is the demon of ill will. In this case, Jesus is speaking to a Pharisee of name Nicodemus. Nicodemus. You know what I mean. And Jesus was telling Nicodemus, we must be born again. This birth must be by fire and water. And Nicodemus, a Pharisee, says, dude, wait. Does that mean that I have to get once again inside the womb of my mother? And Jesus, in his infinite compassion, said something like, bro, no. How can you be a teacher of these things and you don't know this? This is what Jesus said. Well, he didn't say it like that, but you get the drift. He said, no one can enter the kingdom of God, that kingdom, men 5, 6, and 7, unless they are born of water and spirit. He said, flesh gives birth to flesh, but the spirit, the innermost, gives birth to that of the spirit. That birth of water and spirit, that is the work of fire, of water, and the innermost. If we spoke in terms of mantra, I, A, O, ignis, fire, aqua, water, origo, spirit. I-A-O happens to be the fundamental mantra of the great work. You must be born from water and spirit. That is that second birth. And then, of course, there must be sacrifice for humanity. We have to work for others. We have to be able to raise the torch of wisdom so that other people, they're not following our steps, because there's nothing for people to follow from us. But at least we can serve as a guidepost, so that wherever they are, they can see that light in the distance and say, that direction. This is the parlok duty of the being. And all of this progress is only limited by sacrifice. So again, to make progress in this work, we need to have a foundation. We already know what the foundation is. We have mentioned it a gazillion times. Negate negative emotions, negate negative thoughts, build the memory of the esoteric work, veneration for things that are sacred, be kind, be selfless, be serene, be serviceable. That is the foundation. But we have to base this on sacrifice. This sacrifice is not unilateral. The Divine Mother, you will come to see later, that there are higher rituals in which the Divine Mother speaks to the neophyte and says, I have given much. I have put myself in the way of the masters of the law to protect you. I have forgiven your karmas. And yet the ungrateful child lets go of the hand of his mother and goes astray. That sacrifice must be made by the practitioner, but the gods, and we're saying gods, if you understand angels or masters or devas, fine. It is, let's consider that the same. These superior beings, they make sacrifices as well. So what I'll show you here are something called the offerings of the ninth sphere. These offerings of the ninth sphere are the folios, the pages, 14 through 17 of the Borgia Codex. I have shared some of these before. I am expanding to give you a deeper view of what this means and the intervention of the gods. As we start, we see 3 gods in this first image of these 3. These are 3 of 9. Here we see Siu Tecutli, we see Itzli, and we see Pilsin Tecutli. These 3 gods are the god of fire, the god of sacrifice, and the Lord of the night. And notice that they bring an offerings of incense. You see that? That offering of incense, those are the symbols of the anemic and spiritual principles of the being. They are bringing those sacrifices to the temple. You can see that this is a temple. You can see that this is a temple. And they're bringing the sacrifice to the cross. That cross is like the cross of St. Andrew. He was crucified in an X. But that cross is also a symbol of the horizontal path of life, the vertical path of life. That cross is also a symbol of the masculine principle and the feminine principle, and in that sexual connection.
How come it's at an angle?
It is presented as an X.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the Spaniards got to Central America, they were surprised to see that the cross was part of the Aztec rituals, because they thought, oh, that's only Christianity. Pfft, no. So what happens here? Here we see the god of fire bringing a sacrifice of incense, the superior anemic and spiritual principles of the being, and presenting it to the altar. This is the altar of sacrifice. So what is this saying? We must come out of lethargy. Notice that they are in motion. They are not standing still. Okay? And this is saying the fire dominates. Work day and night, because the dark ones do not rest. Here we see Itzli as the Lord of the night. And you can see that one of his feet is in a puddle of water. That means action. It is his right foot. The path of righteousness. In the waters of life, offering that sacrifice before the cross. This symbol to the mundane means nothing, but this is deeply spiritual, sexual in nature, for those who understand the symbols. And here, there must be harmony between the inner and the outer house. There must be association in ideas. There must be affinity among those who work together. You know that because he is stepping on the second step of the ladder, of the stairs. There are more gods who participate. I mean, we're reading in the Codex, so we start at the bottom, and we go in the middle, and then we go up. So here we see Centeotl. She is the goddess of corn. That's why we see a plant right here with corn husks. This is Mictlantecutli, the god of death. And this right here is Chachihuitlicue, who is the goddess of the water. She is the wife of the god of waters. And here we see Centeotl bringing that sacrifice of smoke, that offering of smoke to the tree of life made of corn. Here we see the god of death bringing the sacrifice, the offering of smoke to death itself in the cross. And here we see the goddess of the water bringing the sacrifice to an altar that is full of water. You see that? If you have seen the Lingam Yoni of the Hindi, where there is that puddle, that pool and that lingam out of which water emerges. See it right there?
Oh, yeah.
See? So what is this saying? Centeotl, at her feet, she has this lizard, symbol of emotional stability. That emotional stability, those are the tests of earth. Here we see the serpent. These are the tests of fire. Here we see this death. This is the death of the ego. So what is this saying? The seed is fertile when there is emotional stability in the individual and in the couple, 1 and 2. Desire must be restrained during the activity. This is sexual in nature. The Divine Mother eliminates the defects. This serpent right here, Kundalini. The goddess of the water. Without elimination, without this death, it is impossible to refine the work. And then as we get to the top, we see Tlazolteotl, who is the goddess of births. We see Tepeyoyotl, who is the god of the heart. And we see the god of water, Tlaloc, look at his mask and the big eyes, making an offering of water. She is making an offering. Look at the serpent right here, the decapitated man, and we see the cross once again. This right here, this deer, that's a symbol of willpower. The God of the heart, he is offering here at the temple, but notice that he's already past the stairs. Okay, the wood is ready for fire, and he is standing on the rabbit, Okli, which means ability to listen to the voice of the innermost.
Oh, big ears.
And then we see Tlaloc making this offering, standing in the flow of waters. And here we see the practitioner swimming in the waters itself as a fish. He has embraced the wisdom of the waters. So telema, willpower, drives the inner work. And they result in a transformation, this death, this serpent. This is the death of the old, and this man, this is Quetzalcoatl as it emerges. That is Kundalini as it rises in the man itself. Working with fire, you will receive the crown of life. You know that because here this altar, different than the others, it has this tip. This is called, I forgot the name of that. But this, at the crest of this altar, this is similar to that golden apex at the Pyramid of Giza, the one that is some museum.
Oh, really?
So that is the crown of life. And then we see here, make your waters fertile, because the power is in the waters. So notice how here we have in the Borgia Codex showing 9 divinities offering sacrifice, so that the neophyte can grow, so that the practitioner can evolve in this work and transform himself. And then the neophyte arrives. And when the neophyte arrives, again, we're going bottom, right to left. He comes across Sinteotl, Zipactonal, once again, Mictlantecutli, the god of hell, Quetzalcoatl, the Christ, and Xochipilli, the god of dance, music, and art. And they are all taking the initiate and opening his eyes with a thorn of sacrifice. That thorn is a thorn of agave, of maguey. If you've ever been stung with one of those thorns, you will always remember it because it is harsh. But what happens? This is saying seeing does not have to be pleasant, but necessary. We must learn to see ourselves, reflected in others, see ourselves exactly as we are. And it says, transmute your lead into gold, the lead of the personality into the gold of the spirit. Eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. Like the alchemists say, bleach your tin can. Take that internal giver of light that today looks kind of scary and purify him. This is saying the stars guide you, but you must follow your own inner sun. That sun is the innermost. That is the star that guides us. Mictlantecutli says death is the crown of life. Death of the ego, and of course, when the physical body dies, make sure that, like they say in the Buddhist tradition, we are not living for now, we're living for the next one. Here, Quetzalcoatl, welcome with joy and gratitude the negative actions of others. So Quetzalcoatl is a symbol of love. And then we have Xochipilli as the god of dance and music. Fill your days with joy, enthusiasm, and beauty. And notice that this is a number 6. This is a number 6. So there has to be a decision. You as a practitioner have to define yourself. You have to be willing to say, yes, I'm going to be looking with gratitude, the crazy stuff that other people will do, because that is me. You have to decide on your own. You have to be decisive and say, yeah, regardless of what's happening, I need to learn to find joy and gratitude and gratefulness on all these things. This is a number 8. And number 8 is saying, death is the crown of life, but it comes with sacrifice, with patience. Here we have 9. Here we also have a 9. That 9 is the number of the 9th sphere. That is why it's speaking about transmuting your lead into gold, because the 9th sphere is always sexual in nature. There are 5 other gods that come into this work. Xochiquetzal, Tlaloc, the god of waters. Again, Mictlantecutli. This is Tlahuizcalpantecutli and Mixcoatl. These 5 deities here are offering themselves as the inner Christ. A miniature version of each one of them. Remember, the animic and spiritual principles of the being, who is a multiple perfect unity. So each one of them, as a small fraction of themselves, that is my offering. Here are the principles, the virtues, the faculties that you need from me. Wow. Here, this is indicating that this is a process of the internal perfection of the practitioner. So this is saying, Xochiquetzal, the wife of Xochipilli, who is the god of art and beauty, saying, let your life be a masterpiece. Tlaloc is saying, receive my wisdom so you may refine the mercury, the waters of life. Mictlantecutli saying, learn to acquire dominion over life and death. Tlahuizcalpantecutli is saying, the inner battle, notice that he has given himself with spears. He is saying the inner battle brings the light of the intimate Christ. And Mixcoatl is saying self-sacrifice so you can work with the waters. And the last that I have here is the 3rd cycle, in which the 5 deities are confirming the inner savior and nourishing the practitioner with the anemic and spiritual principles of the being. Notice that from the stomach of them, there is a stream of putrefaction that is coming out. You see that? Mm-hmm. They are purifying the practitioner. And here we see again Xochipilli, the god of music, dance, and art. Tonatiuh, who is the father of creation. This is Itztlacolicuih. Itztlacolicuih. The warrior. Here we see Cipetotec and we see Tonalejyaotl. And they say, show that you live life with harmony and beauty. Demonstrate. Tonatiuh says, may your actions demonstrate the will, not of the self, the will of the innermost. Itztlacolicuih says, may your life be lived in the synthesis of opposites. He's dressed here for battle. Cipetotec says, for you to go up, remember that you must first go down. So any subsequent progress requires of us to go dig a little deeper so that we can reach higher. And Tonalejyaotl says, as the warrior, he says, life is a battlefield and you are the warrior. So you can see here the symbols of the process of purification, the self-sacrifice that the practitioner must bring, but he is not alone. These great masters, these divinities, they are here with us every step of the way. And Samael says, here, we are here to provide you with all the means and all the systems and the science that you need to become number 4 people. This is what we had to share on the 7 types of men. Do you have any questions?
No, it's wonderful. Lots of work.
Okay, very well. So dear friends, thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you next time. May all beings be happy.